Oh, well, kicking it off, I'm Chris. We are Southwest Hops. It's a family-run business here in a little town called Yornup. We've been trialling and erroring along quite a few years to get where we are today. We've got just over an acre of trellis system with 5 varieties, we've been chatting with Rocky Ridge for a number of years with the hope of landing where we are today, which is absolutely sensational, where we're commercially supplying hops, and we're looking to grow further down the line with that, and which then lands to this collaboration of Wet Spice. Absolutely banging beer with 87.5 kilos of wet hop went into it, 3 varieties of Chinook, Columbus, and Flinders, and Ross has done it proud.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, good quality ingredients to play with, mate. So that's the first rule of brewing.
Copy that.
So I guess, Roscoe, do you want to give some specs on the beer? What we landed at, I guess some of the more kind of finer details in regards to, OG.
Yeah, so we're going, obviously, it's basically a red IPA with a touch of rye in there, 6.3%. We've got 6 different malts in there. Kept the rye fairly low. It's only down at about 6.5% rye in there. Just gives a nice little bit of a peppery note to the body. Got that nice rich red colour by using a bit of West Australian roasted wheat, but still kept that body nice and light, leaning more towards your sort of West Coast IPA type of body, so that it really lets those hops shine through as much as possible. Nice and clean and crisp. Water was 2.5 to 1 sulfate to chloride. Again, just letting those hops come through. And yeah, just basically everything was built to just let the hops shine, but still have a nice bit of malt body there to really support those like spicy, fresh vegetal notes that you get from wet hops. And yeah, it's drinking magnificently at the moment, in my opinion, and will do for a little while to come. It'll be great to see how it sort of morphs over the following month or so, as those fresh hops start to sort of drop off a little bit and sort of settle down into more of a aged hop character, as these wet hop beers tend to do. But yeah, really enjoying it and looking forward to hopefully getting to drink a fair bit more of it. But the boys have probably sold most of it out from under me by now. So
that's the plan. That's the plan. Awesome. Trey, do you want to give us a bit of an intro into yourself and what you guys do?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Trey, and my wife and I, live down here in Karridale. And about 7 years ago, we, got in sort of similar time as Hamish into the idea that we'd want to grow hops on a bigger scale. And that was when I first sort of met Hamish, sort of at the exact same time as we were setting up, and he was setting up, and we were doing some similar things, which was trying to grow hops to be used in local beer. So it was a pretty cool experience in regards to getting to work with people early on. So yeah, that was about 7 years ago now. And then we were very, very fortunate enough to learn from each other and do our thing, sort of isolated as everyone sort of is in different like little pockets around here. It's been a pretty awesome journey over the last 7 years to see sort of a hop industry start here in Western Australia, start back for the first time in, a quarter of a century, 25 years plus, probably since some of the last West Australian hops were used commercially, into now. It's thanks to people like sort of Rocky Ridge and brewers not taking a punt, I don't think, but actually trusting and working with hop growers to get to the point where we're at today, where you guys are brewing numerous batches of wet hop beers and things, and the relationship that we've been able to then build with Hamish and Rocky Ridge, but even Ross, I know before that, working with you and kind of showing you our product and hops and things to where we are now, where I think we've developed a bit of a trust and a bit of a concept of the hops that we grow are what they are and they speak for themselves. And we're so stoked now sort of to be in the place where we figure out down here in Karridale what hops are growing well and what brewers want and they want to use, and then how they work well. That's been probably one of the coolest things, I reckon, guys, is to figure out how to use maybe whole cone hops and or wet hops specifically in beer. It's been a really, really cool journey with different beers kind of coming out. And this year specifically working with Rocky Ridge, had a conversation with Ross about, well, it's that time of year, and I think he probably doesn't look forward to it, but he's going to get a text message most years going, well, it's that time of year, and what do we want to do? And I reckon luckily this year he kind of opened it up, and that you guys were having conversations, and then the beer that was decided, which is a special bitter, is just a perfect, I think, addition to a concept of wet hopping. And drinking it now, and I think Ross alluded to it, it's been in the can for a little bit now, and the beer is actually changing. Because I drink it most every day. It's my beverage of choice right now, thanks to Rocky Ridge as well. But we fortunate enough to actually see how it's changing in the can, and it's actually just developing so amazing with the malty biscuity flavors within those wet hop characteristics. Could not be more excited. And then on top of that, the feedback that we've gotten from just the entire sort of WA beer consuming public, and or specifically up in Perth, has just been like, yes, this is great. So we've had a blast.
Oh, that's awesome. It's great to hear.
I think it's probably a good little chance for us to also talk a little bit about the fact that it's so exciting having seen the hop industry really get back onto its feet. And I mean, obviously, you guys are two of the growers who we've been working with really closely, and there's a couple of other growers who are stepping up as well and really taking hops very seriously again, where, you know, that knowledge for a while was lost, and the general sentiment was that they don't grow particularly well here, and that they're too hard, or they don't yield well enough. And I think that's really gone out the window now, and we know that they grow really well here. And most excitingly, I think there's that really distinct terroir to them. So there's real differences between hops grown in each different region, and the essential oils that we're getting out of them, the flavors we're getting out of them, the textures, everything's just subtly different, but different enough that it's noticeable, and noticeable in the finished product. I think Ross can probably go into it a bit further as well, but I mean, the processes we used in each of these beers were distinctly different as well. So where Trey, we used your hops in Whirlpool, we actually then adapted and used the hops in our Louderton and circulated the wort through them in the wet spice. So it's really interesting using wet hops. It's something that we're not particularly well equipped for here in WA, because we don't have a huge industry at the moment. And as it grows, I think brewers will become more accustomed to using those whole hop cones. And I think I'll probably leave it to Ross to talk a little bit further about the differences between whole hops and pelletized hops and the various forms that they come in currently, because that's actually pretty critical to the whole idea of us having fresh wet hops versus just having preserved hops.
Over to you, Roscoe.
Yep. So yeah, as Hamish said, we used two different methods for getting the hop character into the two beers. So in the Karridale wet hop, we added them all to the Whirlpool. And basically, so all in there, set in the Whirlpool for, I believe it was about 15 minutes of Whirlpooling, and then for the transfer. Unfortunately, I was actually away, fortunately, because I didn't have to clean up the hops. I was away on holiday when we actually brewed the wet hop. So we got more of your sort of standard, not a great way of putting it, but your more sort of standard Whirlpool hop character out of that. So kept the probably less vegetal notes than what we've got from the wet spice, but more of that sort of like top note, fresh citrus came through. But we did notice the boys didn't stop complaining about having to clean up the hops for 2.5 weeks. To be fair, they love a whinge, so they kept them happy. And B, we could see there was a lot of lupulin left behind as well, which we hadn't really managed to extract, so it hadn't been the most efficient way of doing it. So then when we came back to do the wet spice, I'd done a bit more research / also knew I was probably going to be the one who had to do the cleanup. So came up with the idea of adding the hops, basically knocking the brew through, cleaning out the Louderton really well, and then adding the hops into the lauter tun, which has obviously got that false floor. So the hops are able to sit on top of that false floor. We then pump the hop wort back into that lauter tun over the top of the hops, and ran our rakes to mix it, and also had a recirc pump going. So basically cycled all the way through those hops, basically like a giant hop back. And yeah, certainly got a lot more extraction out of the hops that way. So you've got a lot more of that lupulin out, but also obviously having that longer contact time with the hop wort, we got a lot more of those vegetal notes come through as well. But as I was talking when I was out the other day, it's kind of a hard one. Like generally speaking, when you talk about vegetal hop notes in beer, it's a detractor. But in wet hops, it's very much a plus, because it's like that fresh vegetal note rather than that dank, earthy vegetal note. So yeah, both ways work really well. But yeah, we definitely got a bit more extraction out of the using the whole hops in the lauter. But then conversely, when we went to dry hop stage, we used the whole cones in the wet spice. So they pretty much exploded on top, and we got a nice touch of spice and a bit of citrus coming through from those. But there was a lot more of those went in than with the Karridale. Basically, as the hop industry has grown here, and some of the other players come in, there's even Aaron at you probably remember which company he's from, but Aaron has also got Aaron's got a pelletizer in. So Trey was able to take his fresh hops straight off the vine and get them pelletized, and we're able to dry hop with the fresh pellets. So generally speaking, you're talking bang for back with pellets, you're talking 6-to-1 the whole cone hops. So we're able to give a lighter dry hop addition with the pellets and extract more of that, again, vegetable, but more of the spice and sort of woody, minty character from those hops, which has come through in that best bitter really nicely. But yeah, it's been really cool to be able to do 2 different wet hop beers this year and use two different contrasting methods of actually extracting flavors and aromatics and everything out of them, and seeing what are pros and cons to both, and working out which way we want to do it going forwards. So yeah, it's been really, really cool to be able to play with 2 this year instead of just the 1, and doing different styles. We've always done double IPAs with our wet hops, and most crews tend to go like really, really big instead of sort of letting the malt and the beer itself sort of sit back and just be a support for those hops and let everything play together a bit more, in a bit more of a drinkable fashion, for want of a better way of putting it. But yeah, I'm actually absolutely stoked on both the beers and how they turned out this year. Can't wait for next year.
Well, the fact is I don't have any of the best bitter left in my fridge. Otherwise, I would have cracked one of them to have side by side with the wet spice. The wet spice only got canned this week, so
I'm out of that one as well.
Yeah, I don't have either.
So I think that speaks volumes. I've got a fridge full of a lot of different releases of our beers, and that one went pretty promptly. So just as a note as well, I reckon it's probably important to dive a little bit more into that vegetal character that you're talking about, Roscoe, and the fact that the vegetal we get out of these fresh hops is more like fresh cut grass. It's that smell you get in spring when hay is being made or silage is being made. It's really fresh and light and vibrant. It's not a dank, earthy, rotten vegetable that you can get from the other end of the spectrum where beers have sat on hops for too long. So there's a real distinction between those 2 ends of the scale, and it almost doesn't want to be called vegetal. It wants to be called something else to really describe that freshness and that lightness, because I think it doesn't do a service to what these hops actually are and what they do inside of that beer. I mean, do you agree with that? Or I think
110%. As I said, yeah, it's one of those hard things. Like, you call it vegetal because your mind sort of goes to that straight away. But yeah, and even in the tasting notes, that is what it reminds you of. But yeah, I think we need to, well, some more fun for maybe people who are better at marketing than I am. Come up with some better terms to describe what character you get from these hops. Because it's a fantastic time of year because you don't get it any other time of year.
Yeah.
Given that the flavors are new almost and unique, even though you guys have been doing the wet hops with Trey and Karridale hops there, that for a number of years, and we've joined in now, it's new to the palate, new to the senses. So trying to actually find the right words to describe them is the trick, isn't it?
Well,
Yeah,
as
yeah,
Hamish
100%.
touched on as well, the hops that you're producing are going to be different to the hops that Trey are producing, even though it's only 100 kilometers apart, give or take.
100%.
It's really cool that you do get those different nuances from each grower, which is amazing.
Absolutely, and just on that, we dropped off at the post office 5 lots of our varieties to be sent to America for full profile analysis. So I'm very excited to get those results so that we can talk what future beers look like.
That's great.
Unreal. That's exciting. Yeah.
And I think
It's really cool time of year. It's a lot of fun, and it's just always great fun collaborating. I mean, collaborating is something that we've always loved doing, and it's great when we can work with people who are like-minded to us, and obviously supporting small local industry is a huge part of our MO, and seeing a new industry stepping on, an old industry resurrected, I guess, but almost a new one in a lot of ways, coming to the forefront is super exciting. And I think there's a good future in it as long as we get everyone banded together and working together for that common goal, which is to have the ability to process the hops, because we're going to need that, particularly if the volumes get high enough, and then also the awareness around how cool West Australian fresh hops are. And that's part of the reason for having this discussion, is to be like, look, there's faces to these local hop companies, and we want to see you guys really succeed, and we want to see this industry get up off the ground, and we want to see the brewers getting right behind it and supporting it. So
on that, I reckon, Hamish, you brought up 2 really, really cool points that basically everybody here has brought it up, and it's an interesting concept. But the first one is like that really kind of appreciating what even a wet hop beer is. It's very interesting. My wife and I sit there and we were chatting about these ideas that maybe even having a wet hop festival and stuff, and then alongside that wet hop festival, someone maybe want to put in a big, huge, dry hopped, pelletized fresh hop, and we're like, well, that doesn't really work. I think people then understanding and kind of getting the concept of what even fresh hop beers taste like, and as brewers become more experienced with even brewing it, we kind of know what we're actually trying to achieve out of it. It's interesting. People's first thought is that it's going to be this huge hop bomb, and what they realize when they even come to the hop farm and they crack fresh cones open and they see them, it's actually really beautiful but subtle, and it's like somehow celebrating that concept of subtlety, which is, there's no way that's an easy thing. But I think drinkers are even not even just the growers and the brewers, but drinkers are being even educated about, and they're fully on board with it. The concept, really trying to, I guess, extrapolate those really subtle flavors out of well-crafted beer, because that's really what you get out of a wet hopped beer. You don't get these huge hop bombs. What you get are these beautiful, fresh, and just as flowers are, they're very subtle, like little things. And the appreciation that people have shown for that subtlety, I almost had thought might be lost on people now because of such a huge beers that are around, and even beers that you guys make that are the most hoppiest things I think I've ever tasted, that then people can also be open, and not just people, but also even like breweries like yourself and organizations willing to then go, no, we'll also produce this other product that is a little bit more maybe involved when you drink it. You kind of have to maybe be open to the concept of subtlety.
Yeah, look, it's all about flavor, right? And it's all about exploring what beer can be, and it's about exploring different methods and the different techniques. It's about exploring different ingredients. And I mean, yeah, you're right. We do some ridiculously big fruit bombs. We do some ridiculously big hop ones, but this is all about exploring raw ingredients at their absolute finest. So they're fresh, they're coming straight into the beer. You're right, there's a lot more subtlety involved in it, but that subtlety is beautiful, because then it also is a challenge for us and for the brewers to make sure that's not being lost in everything else that's happening, that we don't have yeast esters overtaking the hops, we don't have malt that's coming to the forefront. It's all about finding that right balance and making sure that all the flavors are playing together really nicely to present that product in the best way it possibly can. And I think honestly, Ross and the team have done an amazing job with both of these. I mean, I'm having, like I say, a wet spice at the moment, and it's got this beautiful complexity, and there's this delicious, very subtle aromatic, but the aromatic's there with a huge resinous body, and you can really taste that lupulin on the palate and on your tongue. It's there, and it's just
You're making me thirsty.
fantastic.
I want one.
I don't have a beer.
But the other thing I was thinking of there, then that coincides with it. Ross hinted at it, and I know is just, and you did as well, Hamish, the idea of where we're kind of headed next with it. And that's been probably the biggest, most fun ride the last couple of years. And Ross mentioned Aaron Davies at Preston Valley, and now even another Aaron down in Denmark and things. We're really trying to go like, wet hops is something that is unique and fun to work with, but that next step for us to be able to then supply breweries and or even people that drink beer with then a different concept of our hops as well, which now we're able to really put the energy into drawing them properly, storing them properly, and now early stages of processing them, which again, I have to take my hats off to you guys and anybody who's then willing to go, yeah, we'll give your, pellets a go, or at least we'll see what they are. And I know I think I had asked Ross and things like that, any feedback about them, positive, negative, and kind of how we can then to maybe continue to keep like moving forward with this concept of local hops. And for us, the next step definitely is somehow pelletizing and preserving those. So then breweries like yourselves and whatnot can use our hops outside of this very small celebratory window of wet hopping.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, it's exciting.
Yeah, we'll take whatever we can get from other you guys.
Well, that's it. It's about supporting local industry.
Yeah, keeping that quality in mind. And I think that's what drives people like us getting into it. We've worked with hop pellets ourselves. We kind of know the concept of what T90 pellets look like and what they feel like and where they need to be. And we're very conscious of the fact that whatever product then we put into the hands of brewers, it needs to not just look and smell right, but it needs to function correctly. And that's probably the next really, really fun hurdle for us. Brewers are already facing it and actually winning, obviously, with the beers that you guys have produced, facing how to work with whole cones, how to work with wet hops, how to do something that then a lot of breweries aren't designed to do. At the same time, we're trying to facilitate sort of how do we then further our own product in regards to getting a dry product into hands of a brewer that, as I said, functions and kind of plays well with all the other ingredients.
Yeah, that's awesome.
100%.
I totally agree. I think we're very lucky with our craft brew industry that we have here. It's burgeoning. There's so many opportunities. The future is bright. The future is hoppy, and I'm very excited for the support from yourself, Trey, from Hamish, Ross, you guys. It's absolutely sensational. It gives us the faith to expand and do what we're doing and be part of an incredible industry. We're so bloody lucky.
Yeah, Chris, you're right with that. I think at the end of the day, we can grow all the hops we want, but there has to be brewers and breweries not willing to take a risk, but willing to actually work with ingredients. Otherwise, what we do then, Chris, is not pointless, but our hops don't find their little home.
Yeah.
So
they're just in a keg or a can.
Exactly. So we've got a few more minutes left on the meeting, guys. So I figured a good chance to ask a question would be, what beer got you into the idea of growing hops? And I guess what beer excites you the most currently, or what would be the style that you'd like to see used in a wet hop beer?
Hey, I'll go first, right? I'll jump in with
what you guys have done. This red rye, I haven't gotten to taste it yet, but that excites me absolutely no end. I think that concept of spice and rye and vegetal wet hops, and then the spiciness that you actually just get from, I think, the lupulin and the resin that our hops present, I think that excites me. That kind of a beer definitely gets me going. But as far as what got me going on with hops, it was those, and I'm oddly enough waving the flag, but Sierra Nevada, early days, got me on this concept of loving hoppy beers, but balanced beers. And that got me into growing my own hops, and it just up in Doubleview, probably like 15 years ago. And now seeing brewers now use hops that we grow, that's now the biggest buzz out there. That you grow hops kind of all year and things like that. And harvest is very short and intense. Chris, I know you know this, but to be able to then enjoy the hops in a can of beer is the biggest buzz as a hop grower for me.
That's awesome.
100%. Our journey was that we were living, or I was living, a self-sustaining lifestyle, growing vegetables, raising animals, doing all of those things for consumption, and making beer, of course. And it was like, well, I've got a great green thumb. I'm making beer. I might as well have a go at growing hops. And I was able to grow, at one point there, I had claim to the singular largest individual collection of hops in Western Australia, 23 varieties. To your point that you made earlier, Trey, we're sort of trial and errors, and my point that I made earlier also is that we were able to see what varieties worked here in Western Australia and what didn't, and hence why we've been able to narrow it down to 5. What I would love to see moving forward is a repeat of this wet spice, because it's banging, and I'd like to see a combination into a stout, as I'm a big stout guy.
Cool. I like that. That's
There you go,
awesome.
Roscoe.
That's-
Yeah.
All I heard was Doppelbox. So yeah.
That's all you hear. You must. You got selective hearing.
But that's the Vienna Gold, mate. Hey?
Yeah, that's it, mate.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to have too much of a hard time convincing Roscoe to make anything of a traditional style. We're often kind of reining him in from brewing as many Doppelbocks as he like. But a wet hop Doppelbock could be fun as well, Roscoe.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure if it would work. I think by the time it had finished lagering, you would have lost that wet hop character that you wanted. That was the whole point. I think both the beers that we've done, for me, have been my favourite wet hop beers that we've done. The pair of them, just that, as I sort of said earlier, I think the way that we've always sort of gone by going, oh, let's just go big and throw everything at it. And as you sort of alluded to as well, Hamish, you end up sort of making it a bit muddled, and you don't you end up with everything trying to shout at once, and nothing really standing out or really being balanced. And by reining ourselves back in on that a bit, and just as we've learned, understanding that these beers are a lot more subtle. They're not shouty. They're not big shouty beers. Just letting everything have a nice conversation together and just like flow and balance. I think it's a lot better. I mean, I'm hoping by next year, I'm sure we'll also have a way that we're looking at ways to recirc our dry hops with pallets, but the system we're looking at, I'm sure we'll be able to do the same sort of thing with wet hops and use it as like a giant hop cannon. So be able to do the dry hop with the wet hops and use and stay as a whole cones and circulate the finished beer through that, and try to extract lupulin out that way as well, and be able to have a counterpoint of that versus same style of beer with the freshly palletized, and keep experimenting with these sort of things as well, and keep having fun with it, but also keep making tasty beer.
That's the aim of the game.
Yeah, I would say that, and you're right, Ricky, that is the aim of the game. But I think also what's really cool, what I think you guys know, and I think some people know, but drinkers definitely need to know, is how fresh this beer is. It's so awesome from when we're picking the hops and they go into the beer that same day, and then you do your ferment like you normally would, but then these things are canned and then out there for consumption, so people are able to taste these amazingly fresh beers. Is just it's mind-blowing.
That fresh expression of hops is amazing. It's really
exactly, and it's part of the education. This is the most exciting part, because the industry is so young in terms of fresh hop, that we're at that precipice of setting the benchmark and learning how they can be utilised in so many different styles and so many different ways, and through whirlpool versus lauter tun, etc., and those type of techniques. But the consumer is really where it's at now, to educate and share the story, where we're getting up before the bloody sun's up, to out there picking the hops, to be able to deliver fresh within a few hours of coming off the vine. That's what it's about. That's the story. And I think we know that Western Australians are very big on local support and in encouraging and sharing that story, and it's just exciting. I think that I think will enhance it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, one of the most exciting things as well is this: the time to market is from brew to actually getting into consumers' hands. I mean, there's some wet hop beers that happen over on the East Coast, and they take a month or so to get across to us, versus we're literally packaging it and it's out to market. So people are getting this beer in their hands in its freshest possible state and its best possible conditions. So I think there's a lot to be said to that sort of, we're brewing with local ingredients, we're presenting those local ingredients and those beers in the best way they possibly can, in the freshest format that they could possibly be presented in. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah. We're going to run out of time, guys, on this Zoom, so it's probably a good chance to wrap it up with that. But really appreciate having you guys on, and hopefully this does go some way to helping with that education on these beers. And obviously we've got the release of Wet Spice coming up, and the Karridale Best Bitter is out in the market already, but we'll make sure we make a lot of noise around these beers. And thanks for dialing in, guys. Really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Great to catch you guys.
All right. See you
Thanks, Charlie.
Bye.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. See you guys. Bye.
Trying to hide it.
Great finish. See you guys. Bye.